This is the City Council workshop for June 19th, 2024. City Clerk, would you call us, do the roll call, please?
Councilmember Sell.
Here.
Councilmember Papalardo. Here. Councilmember Stevenson.
Here.
Mayor Chazet.
Here.
Vice Mayor Butlin.
Here. Okay. We have a presentation this evening. The staff is presenting an overview of the city to the City Council on chapters 8 and 11 of the proposed Land Development Code. Mr. Bapp.
All right, thank you very much. Stephen Bapp, Growth Management Director. I'll take you through chapters 8 and 11. Before you, on your screens, you'll have the visual, and you also have a paper copy of the presentation I'm giving tonight. Chapter 8 will be landscaping and buffering. Chapter 11 will be signs. Of note, this will be our final workshop of about I believe about an 8-month process now of workshops. Workshop number 6. Next month, we'll bring forward the finalized draft to the council for review and adoption hearings. Agenda here is before you. Before we get into chapters 8 and 11, I just want to hit on one topic from a previous discussion on circulation and parking. And what that involves is parking of RVs, boats, trailers, etc., which is found both in our current code and our future code. What our current code states is indicated before you, and what the restriction is, we say the RVs, boats, and trailers shall not be parked basically in the front portion of the lot, except for the driveway area. And there are other provisions stating the RV, boat, and trailer needs to be licensed, needs to be clear of debris, cannot be lived in, etc., which are included in the current code. As we move forward in the traffic circulation chapter, we've listed out the criteria again for these type of very popular items in Florida, RV boats, trailers, etc. What we stated in the 8th comment was mobile recreation shelters or vehicles and watercraft may be parked in the driveway. That's what we stated, and they have to meet the criteria, of course, of the other chapters. Now, there was some question and discussion is, do we want to continue allowing the parking of said vehicles on the driveway portion of individual lots of the R1 through R6, MH5, which is a like a Traders Cove type area, and other residents found within the PUD. So that was one question, if we want to have that continue. We've looked at it, so we figure, well, we can keep it written as it states to allow licensed vehicles to be parked in the driveway, or we can move. I brought forward a proposed option, which would, to summarize it, with stating, shall comply with all conditions. If unable to comply with parking behind the front facade of the building due to a smaller lot size and not being able to be set back from the neighbor's property, they could park in the driveway itself. So if you have a smaller lot size, such as like an MH5 lot, Traders Cove, or maybe some of the smaller lots in the older part of Plantation Estates, which is near here. If they could not fit their RV without being closer than 5 feet to the neighboring property, then they could park in the front property. So those are some options we came up with. What we're seeking was just a brief discussion from the council and guidance and input to which way to proceed forward.
Okay. The language doesn't say clearly what I always understood the code to be, and I brought this up. There was a discussion with a resident, and there was a comment that led me to dig a little deeper. It's always been my understanding, and I think perhaps some of you as well, that you could park your RV or your boat in front of the house for 36 hours. Beyond that, it had to be behind the front plane of the house. Now, it's written something about, the language is different, but that was the general meaning was behind the front plane of the house. I always liked that because otherwise we could have a lot more lots parked full of recreational vehicles. And when we went through this, I didn't catch that we decided to say anybody could do it as long as they parked it on a driveway surface. So I wanted to have a discussion. I understand that the pinch point that may have given rise to some of this was probably a Trader's Cove, where there's physically no way to have a recreational vehicle on the property, given the way the lot's configured. And I don't mind having an accommodation for certain people where it's a traditional pinch point, but I couldn't see it being citywide. We have enough abuses as it is, and it seems to me that it could be very undesirable in my viewpoint. But I would like to hear from others, because my viewpoint doesn't carry the day. Does anyone else have any thoughts about whether you like the simplicity of the proposed new language, which none of us keyed in on when we were reviewing that chapter, which just says if you park it in the driveway, it's okay? Or would you like more restrictive language saying, generally speaking, it has to be behind the front plane of the house, however you write that in code? If you loading and unloading for a day and a half, no issue, but then it gets put away. And this proposal is that if your lot doesn't work, you can still park it in front, which would take care of Trader's Cove and anybody else that wanted to hang their hat on that, given their lot configuration. So I would entertain questions or comments, because like I say, that's my feedback, and the reason we're discussing it tonight is I glossed over it when I read it. I didn't understand we were making a change in what I've always understood was our approach. So, is there,
Yeah,
Vice Mayor?
of course. I'm concerned with just parking it in front. I don't know, depends, some of these are pretty big.
Yeah, they're big.
They're huge, and visibility coming around a corner, up the street, I think front, I know, and the other question I had was HOAs. If you're in an HOA.
That rules. We don't have to
we
do a
don't
code
rule,
for that.
but
Yeah.
I know, I'm just saying, in our HOA, you can only do it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and you have so many hours to do what you got to do,
Yeah.
clean it up, and get it out. I don't like the idea of parking in front for visibility. Some of these could take up the whole driveway, or, I mean, there are storage facilities available just for these purposes when you don't have availability for your RV.
Or boat.
Or boat, or whatever. I just think it's risky because there's no dimension capacity to say it can't be bigger than, and you don't want to start getting into that because then you have to go out there and, tape measure everything. But visibility around the corners and neighborhoods, I think I have a problem with, just being yes in the front.
Councilmember Pappalardo.
If I could stack a small question on top of that. If we're talking about lots that would be generally non-conforming because of typically size limitation, right?
Correct.
How often is the driveway going to be large enough to accommodate such a larger vehicle as well? Is it going
And
to
then
turn
does
into
it put all the
parking
cars
lawn
on the street?
or on the street? At what point is it just, is this used as a way to create leverage and it's abused much further than the intent of it? That's my hang up right now.
Anyone else have input? Councilmember Sell.
This is another example of one size does not fit all. Like my neighborhood, I always was under the assumption if I was going to buy something that large that I did my homework before I bought it and made sure I could tuck it either on the side of my house, out of sight,
Yeah.
out of mind. I know not everybody does that, so they just want to stick it in their driveway forever. I'm great with the 24, 36 hours.
Well, that's part of our code now. You can load and unload, 36 hours is enough to do that.
Personally, I'm also a fan of getting it tucked out of the way.
Yeah,
Know what you're buying, know where you can store it before you
Yeah.
make that purchase. I don't really have a great answer for Trader's Cove if we just try to do the one size fits all. So,
Well, it's not just Trader's Cove.
yeah.
well, I think that's where the discussion probably was first engendered that led
Right.
to the proposed change. And my concern was, I know when the state does this, we don't like it. When there's a bad actor down in Boca or something, they make a new law and we all got to comply because there was a bad actor in Boca. I don't like all of us getting the fallout for one particular situation. That's just personal. I also think that in addition to visibility, as the Vice Mayor says, There is something about the aesthetic. If you're on a small lot and you're next door to somebody and they got a 36-foot RV that parks their driveway shut all the time, means the rest of their vehicles are on the street or illegally parked in the yard, to me, it's visual pollution if I'm the next door neighbor. It blocks what I can see 2 doors down from my front yard because there's a parked, rarely moving, large structure. But I'd also like to hear from Councilmember Stevenson if you have a comment or question.
Thank you, Mayor. I would have to agree with a lot of what everybody already said, in particular that the driveway shouldn't be permanently blocked. If people have too small of a lot, sorry, go find a place to park it or buy a place that could fit what kind of lifestyle and additional vehicles that you would like and keep them in the back and not permanently in the driveway.
Perhaps, if it is largely to date an issue that has been of concern to Traders Cove, we could instead retain the current language, which in common sense terms is you park it behind the front plane of the house. We could say that if you live in a community with a homeowners association, that the homeowners association would have the right to allow RV and boat parking in the paved driveways. And that would mean that Traders Cove could do that, and that would be the out in the code, that if it is a community that is ruled by an HOA, just like the HOA can say no, even if we permit stuff, perhaps in this case, the HOA could say yes, just for their community, and we could embed it in the code so that they have the right to do that. That is one suggestion. And that doesn't pick Traders Cove out, but it says if you guys want to do this, we've established a platform where your community can, and it doesn't affect anyone else, but it says the city will not come down on you for it.
We can write that language. So as I capture what the council desire is to keep
Sort of the
it
current
tucked
thing.
in behind the front of the property line. They can be parked in the driveway for a 36-hour.
Right.
For provisioning the vehicle.
Yeah.
And then the homeowners associations have the right to allow
Permit
RV, boat, et cetera, parking.
On the driveway only,
That's-
within there,
Yep.
and that the city would not object.
Okay.
So if it's their community and they want to do it, and all their residents say they want it, and it's just limited to where they live, I don't have a problem with that. And that doesn't put us defining who gets to do it and who doesn't.
I have another
Yes,
comment,
Vice Mayor?
When you talk about putting something in the driveway, and where are they parking their other vehicles, is my concern. Well, I already have people on High Banks and other places that have a 2-car parked driveway, and they're parking 4 cars, which means they're on the apron, across the sidewalk, and now when people walk, they have to go around those vehicles. Now you're saying they're allowed to do this if the HOA says they can.
But you can still enforce no parking over the sidewalk. That's a citation,
Okay.
you know?
As long as you can
Just-
police that one.
I mean,
Yeah, you can- yeah.
Our sheriffs can cite people who have parked a sidewalk closed, is that correct?
Well, but then when does the police have the right to go and ticket inside a HOA
Yeah.
and say, on a private road, and say, okay, you can't do this?
Do they have sidewalks at
That would
their?
be code enforcement.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
it's
Now you're
code.
dealing with code
Yeah.
enforcement.
So if you do park an RV in the driveway and then you park your car on the grass, that's a violation.
Right.
It's got to be in a mulched area or
Right.
paved area. So
And if you park the sidewalk closed, no matter the reason, you can get ticketed, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
You
that's
can.
Correct.
in most jurisdictions. Councilmember Sell.
I'm going to take advantage of what Phyllis opened up there with, I know I call Carmen a lot about it, Shell Road. You know, it's the sidewalks for golf carts and pedestrians and whatever not, but so many people block that driveway. Somebody
Okay,
put a
that's a-
bounce house on the
That's
driveway.
that's a ticket.
Not the driveway, I'm sorry, the sidewalk.
That's a ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just enforcing existing laws.
Well, if we let Carmen know now, he can call whoever he needs to
We
Okay.
do.
to try to educate
Yeah.
some folks to stay off the sidewalk.
Unfortunately, code enforcement, you got to give them 30 days to correct, and they do, and then 30
Yeah.
days
The
later,
party's over.
they redo it again,
Yeah.
so it's a
Yeah.
constant.
Yeah.
But it was a concern to me when this came up in an exchange with residents, and I thought I knew the code, and someone commented, this was on social media, somebody commented back and said, when did they change back to the old code? And I'm racking my brain, I didn't respond. I'm racking my brain, I don't remember any change to the code. And then I realized that it may have been a chapter that we skipped over. We didn't make the point, so they expect that we will change it next month to the permissive language. And they don't understand what the process is. So they actually tipped me off, because then I did my research. Okay, we can move on from that.
We'll capture that and have that
Okay.
clarified. Okay, so now moving forward to the next chapters, which is Chapter 8. As other chapters, our tree preservation has been scattered throughout the Land Development Code. And again, we are going to consolidate into a more manageable piece of legislation to follow. Okay, I'm not a tree or expert, but let me just try to go through the landscaping. So some things we did, we did clear up some definitions which had been a problem in the city before, is defining things which are protected, and those now will be any tree greater than 6 inches DBH, and this all comes into tree clearing type permits. We're replacing and modernizing the term of nuisance tree with prohibited tree. Tree removal is prohibited except through proper licensing. And also, we've given some tree protection exemptions, which would include a letter. This is compliant with state law, I believe. Is a letter from ISA certified arborist stating the tree is diseased or dying and proposes a unacceptable risk to property. And that's compliant with the new Florida statute about they can clear out trees with a letter from a certified arborist. Also, tree removal permit, we've separated the tree removal permits requiring by land use type. So there'll be a tree removal permit for residential property and then for commercial. We'll treat them different with a different fee assessed and different methodology. Also moving forward, we've included tree retention areas in the section, tree protection, tree replacement standards in this section. We've also placed penalties for violation of these penalties subject to our code enforcement procedures. We've cleaned up, this is always an issue, is the landscape buffering requirements. We've cleaned up and added more language to the landscape buffering to be more specific rather than just a 20-foot buffer. So we've added these buffers, which are important, especially between residential uses and non-residential uses. We've modernized our plant list only to refer, instead of trying to put a new plant list out, what's allowed, not allowed in the city of DeBary, and what's friendly. We refer to the expert, which is the University of Florida, go Gators, and their required tree, shrub, hedges, vines, and ground cover. Also, we've done the landscaping requirements within vehicular areas, like parking lots, have been updated. Here are some other things we added, foundation landscaping, minimum landscaping and open space requirements, landscaping requirements within rights of way, so if we have median landscaping that's covered in there. Landscaping materials have been updated to ensure low quality maintenance and high quality landscape. Basically, again, following the University of Florida guidelines. Also in the section, it includes the plant list and states no plants from outside the list can be planted and would be considered prohibited unless authorized by the city arborist or our contracted arborist. This helps prevent exotic species from infiltrating our system and taking over. Again, I'm not a tree expert, but this is, that's why we follow a certified expert. Additional specifies for tree at time of planting have been included. The tree root methods have been included. But also, we've done some more tables which are easier to follow. So it states if we have certain features like an alley, water meters, streetlights, et cetera, we have the minimum required spacing from said device so the tree won't die and the tree won't cause problems with our infrastructure. So we've added some separation requirements which are consistent with guidance from the university. Also included some diagrams and layouts for our tree infrastructure along rights of way. I believe I have a couple of repeat bullets there. Again, things which are included are installation of maintenance standards for the plantings, the confirmation that the landscape work needs to be compliant with all prerequisites prior to issuing a CO. So if they don't meet their landscape work, which is cited in the plan, they do not receive their CO. That's generally the overview. We may have more illustrations after the LDC is adapted as we try to get some of this verbiage into a picture type device. Moving forward to signs. Again, not a sign expert, but we've taken a lot of things which you have in a current LDC which are scattered. We're really in one chapter, I think, and then we moved them all under our sign regulations to have a little more consistent flow. The big thing we faced from our last adoption, there's been a few Supreme Court and Florida Court decisions on things we can do with signs. One really is the maintaining content neutrality throughout our signage. So we cannot ban a sign based on what the content says. And this is a Supreme Court ruling you may be familiar with, which is Reed versus the town of Gilbert. That's drove a lot of the local jurisdictions to rewrite their entire section of their sign code. Our new changes also provide that the city may remove signs in public property or rights of way without notice. So what we call the snipe signs, buy a Yorkie puppy from me, I buy houses cheap, the things we see littering our rights of way, our code enforcement can remove them without objection. Only thing we do not remove would be a political sign, as we formerly call them. It clarifies prohibition and clarifies our vehicular signs. It amends the prohibition on handheld human signs, the sign spinners. There's been Florida law that now states, based on some bad actor in the town of Fort Myers Beach was sued, and now we have to allow spinning people with signs, which you may see in other cities like Daytona Beach, only if they do not impede traffic. So that's something, unfortunately, we have to remove from our prohibited list. We say now handheld and human signs which impede traffic are prohibited. So if they don't impede traffic, then they would be permitted. Next slide is really shouldn't be there, so I'm going to move to the next one. Just some illustrations which we've included to familiarize the general public. We have these aren't window signs, but wall signs placed upon the wall of the structure. These illustrations have been included, which had been in our section for the TOD, but not in our standard sign portion. Window signs, we cover window signs, signs placed on visual windows on the building. Blade signs, you may see these in some cities. I think Mount Dora has a lot of these. We don't have many of these. I think we have one or two businesses that might have them now. But I see this coming in as we do our form-based code in our Main Street. These coming prevalent. Also other places you can place signs, awnings, canopies, pretty typical. But I like to include illustrations because, it gives someone who's designing a building where they can put their signage and how many square footage they have, so it is a guide. We also included guidance for wayfinding signs. I believe downtown D-Land has these signs, and also Mount Dora has these signs, kind of point people to general location of restaurants and attractions. We should probably see this in our Main Street, but we may also see it as we've developed 20, 30 years down the road in our village center. Then also we've written language which some people call menu boards, but we call them monument signs and drive-throughs. So we don't have 50 McFlurry signs throughout the property. We can kind of contain where the signs, while still staying compliant with the Reed versus Gilbert regulations we have. And then also we've included, or we will include, illustrations of monument signs. Monument signs can be lighted internally or externally. If they have verbiage that moves, that's considered not considered a standard monument sign, but that's a electronic something. I just forgot the word, I'm sorry. But that would fall under another purview if the face time changes. So these signs are still permitted. Just of note, we do have some non-conforming signs from the former code. Monument signs are allowed to be 8 feet. I did an informal survey, I think I counted maybe 3, which should have been amortized or removed in 2016. But we've added a new we've added a new time period which these signs will no longer be permitted. I believe it's out to 2030. If the sign still exists and does not comply with this code, then they would have to be made compliant with the new code that will be brought forward. Other proposed changes, we've added limitations on construction signs, saying once they begin site preparation, which is issuance of the pre-plat, they can keep their construction signs on the property until 5 business days following completion. We're limiting some non-residential yard signs to durations of 30 days, et cetera, et cetera. Also, there were some questions. Wait, let me just finish this chapter and then hit some questions that we had. Okay, so we stated, like I said, monument signs can be internally or externally illuminated as long as they don't have light pollution, spillage on the neighboring properties, et cetera. We've given more guidance for, like pole signs are not
Wait,
totally eliminated, but they can be in the B9 interstate commercial zoning definition. We did make provisions, I believe this was brought up by the council, like, so if you have your building frontage up close and a monument sign for some reason won't fit on a non-conforming property, what do? Well, we can have pylon signs in the case that a monument sign physically cannot fit on a non-conforming property. We provided signage for our form-based code district, and like I said, the provision for any non-conforming sign, I mean, we're looking at 6 years, or probably 6 years into the future, when those would have to be made compliant. There was a question that came up from a council member on, well, what about political signs? Political signs on the new, political sign is something that advertises someone running for office. Okay, so, I like Ike, or whatever. That's a political sign. Now, what our code says, we'll treat that as a special event sign, since it's a reoccurring, not really a one-time only, but really one time every 2 years. They would be treated under the new provisions of a special event sign, which would allow posting the signs 44 days prior to the event, and may continue to be placed 5 days after the event. We know there's things like a runoff election that may occasionally occur, but for the period of both of those elections, they would be allowed to be, and then be required to be cleared up 5 days after. So that would still say the same for a political sign, since it's content neutral, would really fall in the same category of other special event signs. Food Truck Friday coming next week, and we have it posted legally, not in the right-of-way or something, and they could have that sign until 5 days after. So we treat them the same, according to Reed versus Gilbert, no special consideration, but we do treat them as a temporary sign with the subcategory of special event sign. So that's this question. So that kind of wraps up the signage. We can answer a plethora of your questions, and we also can answer questions on the landscaping or any other former chapters at this time.
City Clerk, do we have any public participation on the workshop?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay, Councilmember Sell, questions or comments?
Yeah, I got a couple. Provides that the city may remove signs on public property or rights of way without notice. Political signs are okay. And then on another one, you have proposed changes.
Let me just clarify my statement. I was incorrect. You can't put, Bush 2004 in the city right away. It has to be on a property, or Smith 2024.
You really can't put any signs on the
You can't put any sign.
the right
So
of
it's content neutral. You can't put your political sign on the right of way. If it's on a commercial property, say Winn-Dixie gives someone permission to put on their property, or I as a resident give you permission to put your sign on my property. As long as it's behind the sidewalk, et cetera, on my property, that's fine.
But going back to that,
Okay, so,
you also have non-residential yard signs will be limited to a duration of 30 days. So what is a non-residential yard sign?
maybe I missed that one. Okay, so a non-residential,
Businesses,
The yard sign.
businesses having a yard sign outside of their normal signage.
Like the DeBerry Diner sign is up now. It
Yes,
says,
yeah, that would be a,
okay,
oh, correct, thank you
there.
okay.
on that one.
Who is our city arborist?
Our city arborist, we contract with, what, RES? We have a contracted environmentalist that's also arborist
They just
certified.
changed your name. They used to be E-Services, and I don't know what the,
I believe yeah, they were E-Services. I
Yeah.
believe they're called RES now.
and they participate in our development review process. So
Right, they
all the
do.
landscaping and everything else, they provide the review on our behalf, and they're on a contract basis.
Right.
Is a plant and a tree the same thing?
The plant and a tree is a type of plant.
Correct.
'Cause it just,
So you have a plant species which you have.
it's just worded really weird here where it says this section introduces the Florida-friendly plant list reference and states that no plant from outside this list can be planted and would be considered prohibited tree unless authorized by a city arborist. Could that
Well,
maybe
that
be
was-
reworded?
Well, the verbiage in the actual LDC is much more clear than my
It is.
format.
Okay.
Plant list includes ground cover, shrubs, and basic ground cover, vines, shrubs, and trees.
This may be a question for code enforcement, but I was wondering if these tree companies have their own arborists.
Okay, so sometimes they do, but the tree companies we've dealt with that have provided letters, there's a handful of arborists around, and usually we get probably the same 3 arborists that provide us a letter.
So if a tree company is on the up and up, they go to a house or somebody calls them and says, I need my oak tree that's, 40 inches wide, removed completely.
Right.
Where do-
Your guy was not legit.
No. Where do they proceed? Do they say, well, you, the homeowner, needs to have a arborist come
Well,
and determine?
whoever, so what, that would be part of their negotiated permit. What the city would require is a letter from the arborist, whether the homeowner contracted that out, or if or sometimes you have some pretty good tree removal people that work quite a bit with the city that say, I'm going to contact my arborist, here's your letter, yada, yada. Sometimes we get funky letters, and we have our city arborist confirm. Sometimes there's a reputable arborist that we receive letters from, and usually we have no objection. But sometimes if there's an out-of-town person or something that seems, we've received letters that have an address that's for another town for the site work. I said, well, something's not consistent here. Let me have my arborist review it.
But if an arborist says a tree is diseased, they do not need a city permit, and by Florida statute, then they can take it
Right.
down.
But they don't also need verification from the city arborist to come
No.
out and give
No.
a second opinion.
No.
No, Florida
No.
statute does not.
So it's like a roofer looking at your roof going, yeah, you need a new roof because hail damage.
Yeah.
And then,
Sometimes if it's suspicious, we may have our arborist look at it. We've had a few. We have that sometimes for wetland mitigation. We have our environmentalists look at the same report that their certified environmentalists look at. So we have a checks and balance.
I wish we could tighten that up somehow.
Yeah, well,
It's Florida statute. You're not going to tighten that up.
Yeah. Also with political signs, is there anything in the verbiage that says that the political sign has to have whoever was the ownership of that political sign? Like
no.
campaign?
That's state law.
Yeah.
So we don't need to make up laws that duplicate
Okay.
state.
Yeah, that's content neutrality too.
Yeah.
My last one is the wayfinding signs. Like Swamp House really doesn't have anything by the Winn-Dixie Plaza area that points down towards, we have a Swamp House down there, or like a Central 28
Well-
is well hidden. Would these be things that the city would?
Now, usually if you have, okay, so let's say Mosaic Main Street comes in and they say we're on their certified plan, they say this is where our wayfinding signs are going to be. Usually it's for a smaller walkable area. Now, if you're going to have a sign that points you to another location, that, like you described, that would be considered an off-premise sign, and it would not be allowed, like Swamp House this way. It'd be treated the same as like a billboard, which is an off-premise. Now, that would not be permitted. Otherwise, we've had people come in and say, I have a business that's located 4 blocks off of Enterprise Road, but I want a sign on Enterprise pointing me to my business. I said, well, that's an off-premise sign. Because it would be like the Burma shape. We'd have so many signs up on the right-of-way that pointing people to another direction. So that would not be the same in context.
Okay, Councilmember Papalardo?
This is a one-off sign question that can probably go a little bit further, and it's more about the current signage restrictions about temporary, like the flag type of signs, that flappy flag ones. So there's an age-restricted business on 1792. They use a flag sign in front of the building, and they have a monument sign with their business on it. It's legible from the splash pad, a children's facility. So I don't think that this flag is fixing a lack of signage because they are on their monument sign. One, I think the content neutral, of course, but it's kind of inappropriate that there's an age-restricted business advertising across the street from the splash pad. These signs were allowed during COVID, is my understanding, that there was an allowance made to try to help the business community, which was very understandable. We're well past that point, and that allowance has been rolled back. And I know that so is this more of a, I'm trying to think how I should phrase the question, these signs are still not permitted, correct?
I mean, the flag banner says open or yada yada.
Sure, yeah.
Correct. They're
Okay.
not permitted. I believe we put out something in a newsletter recently on
Yeah.
that.
We
we
do, and again, it's typical. You cite them, you have to give them 30 days to remove it. They remove it within 30 days, and then it goes back, and then they put them back up 5 days later.
Yeah.
You got to constantly go redo the code enforcement every single time.
Right. Now, is there any leg to stand on if this is being abused, very clearly a pattern of behavior that they are intentionally breaking this code?
Yeah, and
frequently?
I think, and that might be the repeat offender, and we'll have to take a look at the repeat offender. But usually, repeat offenders are somebody who's been fined, and then they do it again. That's typically a repeat offender.
Okay.
But unfortunately, the code enforcement sides, you have to give them 30 days to correct.
Because it's pretty clear that this is being done in prejudice, I think. And at a certain point, I think that we do need to visit perhaps that definition. Maybe that doesn't fall specifically within this might be general code enforcement, so I don't want to get us off on a tangent, but this is something I find very frustrating. And perhaps it's that one-off situation that just makes me very unhappy that this type of content is that close to a children's facility.
We'll make some land development code changes as we go along. We'll have to get an attorney opinion on what can be done and how we can legally stop those folks who continuously abuse the system, and whether or not we can use that justification to, regardless of what they do on time 2 or 3 or 4, is take them straight to code enforcement.
Perhaps within a calendar year or something to that
Yeah.
effect. Because I know things take time, and I'm not trying to get rid of due process, but if they're repeatedly skirting this rule intentionally because they know they can, there's got to be some enforcement mechanism.
And there's typically a cry of you're hurting business, you're anti-business, and all that kind of stuff. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I don't want to, thank you.
Councilmember Stevenson?
Yes, thank you. As far as the handheld and human signs that we previously weren't allowing, but now the state law says that we have to allow them, correct? You said it
As long as
says
they do not impede traffic.
impede traffic. Does that include visibility at all, as far as like the distance from a driveway or an intersection? Can we limit those, like where they're like more in the middle between, not right next to the intersection is what I'm asking for.
we can, I think we can add, similar to our panhandling law, where they can't be in the medium that's less than 5 feet.
Okay, so maybe we need to add,
Yeah, impeding traffic means they also cannot impede traffic, but they also cannot be in a dangerous situation
we can
in a median less than 5 feet.
we can take that similar language, Carmen,
Yeah.
and add that. So
Okay.
Okay?
And then the other question, I was looking at your presentation versus page 28 in the packet. As far as special event signs, you were saying 5 days after a special event,
And that's just 24 hours.
and this one says 24, okay.
See, from time of publication to now,
Okay.
we've noticed that flaw, and we've
They beat you to it, they
we
corrected
beat
it.
you to
Okay.
it. Also, the parenthetical language where permit required will say no permit required. That
But-
you see there. So
Political signs no longer need a permit either then?
I'd say a special event sign would not need a permit, no.
Okay. And so then 24 hours after the event is ended.
Would be 5 days. And we have to treat everything consistently, farmer's market.
So which one is correct? The
5
5 days?
days.
or-
5 days is
5
correct.
days.
No
Because-
permit.
Okay.
and 5
Because an election is being considered a special event, and so you have to accommodate the fact you can't say all special events except elections. I mean, then
I
then you're
just wanted
getting-
to clarify
yeah.
which one
Yep.
was correct. So it's the 5 days,
5
not the
days.
24 hours.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
No permit.
Vice Mayor Butlin.
Yes, Mayor, real quick. I have no problem with everything that you've addressed, corrected, modified. However, I don't see anywhere where it talks about the size of the signs.
It was in,
How big the signs can be. I mean, yard signs are usually 18 by 24 or, whatever they are. I didn't see dimensions like political signs. I'm seeing these monster signs come in, 4 by 6 or whatever they are. And if we have 10 of those in one section, where are we restricting any of that? In any of the events? When we do our events, we put our flasher signs up. They're up for so many days, and then they're down. Or they're turned off, so at least you're not distracted by them. But when I see these monster signs coming in, and we're just getting into the season, what is that going to look like in our city? And is there anything that restricts the size of signs that can go up? I don't know, you definitely specify, like a yard sign. Is that the standard spike in the ground, dimensions? There's nothing clarifying the size. I don't need to know the answer now, but I think we need to put that somewhere. And also, you talked about wall signs, but I didn't see anywhere in here that talked about murals.
No, you don't.
And I didn't know if we should state that they're not allowed, what are they considered? I don't know. That's just something to,
I think one of the thoughts that we have with the murals is again, we're gonna have to figure out whether you want the council approve them, or if you want to start doing murals like the city of DeLand or some of the other cities, to start providing more art in your community and those aesthetics. So Main Street's probably going to be one of the areas you might want to see murals. You can designate those. If you want those, then we can write some language regarding murals, and that process would be, they would need, council approval.
Carmen,
And also may I note that
Marilyn?
mural
Right.
was addressed in Chapter 5 form-based codes.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. So
All
I'll-
right,
I'll
we'll
look
go
at
back
that.
and review that before the next.
And then the only other thing, again, I live in an HOA, and I know people don't get permits from the city, but they don't get permission from the HOA either, or they're coming to the city and the HOA doesn't know they got a permit from the city. Is there anything anywhere that we can stipulate you need an HOA? If you're in an HOA, you need that approval as well as the city permit to take a tree down, expand your driveway, ground cover your property?
Well,
I
normally we
know.
don't get involved with the HOA. I don't even know if we can legally get involved with.
Okay, I didn't know.
We do have a
No.
sign up in the building department that if it's
Yeah, we do.
certain things
Okay.
that we need
Make sure
HOA
we
approval.
give them not a warning, but a reminder
A
to,
reminder, okay. I didn't know
Yeah.
if that was still there or not. Okay. Thank you. I'm done.
All right, I'll keep my comments short, and if I catch anything else, I'm not shy about
absolutely.
communicating outside of this meeting to bring it forward with any comments from other people at a future meeting. Just quickly, this is an observation under the minimum separation between the landscaping and the features, water meters and utility boxes, 5 feet. I just want to say, going forward, I hope when we consider utility boxes that we consider the screening of them, because I still think that box that we approved by the sheriff's office is ugly.
We do have that in Chapter 5 for
Yes,
form-based code.
yeah. It's
No, it-
difficult because of the size of the spot we permitted it in. And I know you're working to get something other than the daylilies, which are pretty, but they don't really disguise much.
Yeah, I,
Yep, okay. Also, going to the point that Councilmember Stevenson had mentioned about handheld and human signs only permitted, are now only prohibited where they would impede traffic. What is blocking a sidewalk at intersections impeding the traffic? Is human traffic, bicycle traffic, and golf traffic also traffic?
yes,
Okay, so if we have special event election, sign waivers at High Banks and 1792 on a Friday evening, and the cluster of sign holders blocks the sidewalks, would that be a violation of this?
that's a good question. Now, that may not,
They are handheld and human signs impeding the traffic of pedestrians, bicyclists, and golf carts. Well, not golf carts there because we don't have a crossing.
Let us do research with that. If we
Okay,
if
we don't need to settle it here, but it's just a question I
If
had.
we follow the panhandling thing,
Yep.
blocking the sidewalk is
Is an issue.
Is an issue, so.
Okay. Well, if there's no further comment, we will wrap up the workshop. Any further comments? Did you receive the guidance you believe you need?
oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you from planning, for helping us with this. The workshop is now adjourned. I do want to say welcome to all of you who have joined us. Please rise, if you wish, for the invocation and the pledge. Dear God, everyone facing the audience this evening, whether elected or staff, takes very seriously their responsibilities to DeBerry's residents, businesses, and future. This responsibility weighs heavily on evenings such as this, when decisions we make will have an effect on our city for years to come. As we consider the matters before us, give us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that we may make the best decisions for those who have entrusted us to represent them. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the special City Council meeting for June 19th, 2024. City Clerk, would you do the roll call, please?
Councilmember Sell.
Here.
Councilmember Papalardo.
Here.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Here.
Mayor Chazet.
Here.
Vice Mayor Butlin.
Here.
Are there any deletions or amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3 on the agenda today.
Second.
Vice Mayor Butlin?
Yes.
Councilmember Sell?
Yes.
Councilmember Papalardo?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Moving on, we have public hearing number 4. Staff is requesting City Council approve the first reading of ordinance number 09-2024, amending the comprehensive plans, the plan future land use map to change the future land use classification of the property addressed as 181 Fort Florida Road from agricultural rural to residential low density. City Attorney, would you read ordinance 09-2024?
Yes, Mayor. An ordinance of the City Council of DeBerry, Florida, amending the city's comprehensive plan future land use map, the FLUM, changing the future land use designation of a parcel of land being approximately 59.296 plus minus acres located at 181 Fort Florida Road, which is adjacent to and south of West High Banks Road, east of Fort Florida Road, west of Keble Avenue, and north of Conomac Lake Drive, having Volusia County Tax Parcel Identification Number 8031-00-00-0010, amending such designation from agriculture/rural, AR, to residential/low density, R/LD, providing for transmittal, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Thank you. Mr. Bapp, are you presenting for the city?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Stephen Bapp, Growth Management Director for the City of DeBary. What you'll hear tonight is a request or an application for the approval of the future land use map amendment to amend 181 Fort Florida roads